crazy story. Complexity lost to M80 and Wildcard, NA teams, kind of tier 2 NA teams, I guess, and then immediately come back and beat some of the best teams in the world. And that is kind of wild. Also, Elige has the same knife I have, and that's a sick knife. It gets way too much hate. I don't know why people don't love it way more. But anyways, I wanted to take a look at map 2 against Maus with the dual elites. I guess they're dual Berettas in CSGO and CS2, but with the dualies, Grim mows him down, and I'm kind of interested in how much this is just, you know, I think sometimes you have teams like Complexity can, well, teams in general, I've noticed that inter-region matchups, as in like Brazilian teams versus other Brazilian teams, or, you know, North American teams versus other North American teams, although in Europe it's a little bit more like, you know, Danish teams versus Danish teams, like Astralis versus Heroic or other teams, even when they were at their peaks, sometimes went a little weird. But these kind of within their own region matchups often kind of have odd outcomes. So I'm kind of interested because I didn't watch those games specifically. By the way, this angle Elige is holding is really solid. You know, if you look at Shuhi, he's kind of looking the other direction, clearing out heaven, and then he walks past, and that's when you're going to have a chance to get the kill. Some people hold it a little narrower, which is more like make sure that I get the information, but they're never looking at me here. I think it's better, especially if you know they have no armor. You may as well hold it a little wider, right? But they're really just fighting against blocks here. I just wanted to point out the one angle. Probably with an M4, you don't need to get that aggressive. I mean, in general, I think you get a couple of MP9s and some M4s so that, you know, whoever dies can, if the MP9 is there, you can still upgrade, but you still have the utility to hold like the upper rush. That's I think the main thing you really need to worry about on those second rounds is holding the upper rush. But round 3 comes by, and Complexity will be expecting a buy here. You don't go Glocks round 2 and then not buy into the following. So they might have some ideas. Now, I know that, actually, was that a silent... Did he try and silent draw? That's a silent drop. He didn't drop silently, but that looks like he's got a lineup for a silent drop. That's actually crazy. He might have just messed it up. There's another silent drop from Rafters onto Hut as well, but Complexity is expecting something. When you look at the pro scene, they don't do a ton of these kind of like lobby rushes. They'll often do kind of lobby crunches a little bit delayed, but Complexity, they've got 5 M4s and they're just going to go for, you know, kind of a standard setup. So you have Grim. This is always great, but the only problem with this jiggle is if people know you're doing it or you do it a little too often, they can kind of get exploited. Sometimes an Opper can walk into you, but especially against riflers, if they're not expecting it, I think it's great. There's support in lower, and you've got Grim is kind of alone in upper. That's the one thing you've got. And to some extent, I think these are great rounds to be gambling on because Complexity didn't have a ton of utility to begin with. Oh my god, Elige just pulled out his knife at the exact wrong moment. I don't think they saw him, though. They might have seen him in lockers, though. The A1S, actually, I mean, it is underrated. Is it underrated? No, it's not underrated. It's just at these ranges, I feel like the A1S is kind of overpowered. Like at that insanely long range. So Elige spots them out, and because he spotted them out fairly early, you will have JT going for the reaggress. And if they're not ready for this, the timing really makes the difference here because Torji wants to go into heaven. If JT can spot it out, then he's got the information. Grim is in position. He knows exactly what's up. Although he was ready for this earlier, sometimes you can get kind of lazy or, you know, you have multiple angles that you have to hold. But the rotate up heaven, oh, it's tough regardless of the situation. But flop, I mean, not expecting a second player there with the quick rotate up ramp and flop you out through heaven. You know, I feel like Elige, or not Elige, but Complexity to some extent. I haven't been watching a ton of their games, but it does feel like there's just a level of inconsistency in some of their players that's hard to kind of deal with. I mean, Halzerk is typically, he's not the best opper in the world, but he's a solid opper generally. He does have some games where he seems to kind of struggle, but when you look at the players, specifically Floppy and Grim, feel like they kind of just have some games where they're on it and some games where they really can't seem to get a kill at all, you know? And I'm not sure, I don't know, a lot of people have suggested that maybe the solution would be to like replace them. I mean, they've been around quite a while, but I'm not sure. I would have to do some more research kind of in depth into actually why they're having those types of like inconsistencies in their games. Like when you look at, for example, entry fraggers, I talk about this a bit with Donk. It's like every entry fragger generally always gets leeway because you can't always have your aim be perfectly on point. Maybe sometimes people are in angles you're not expecting, things like that. And I'm not saying like necessarily they're both doing a ton of entry fragging, but you know, sometimes you're put into situations where you can't be consistent rather than just being individually inconsistent, you know, in a kind of in a vacuum, right? But this is the round actually we see the aggressive play in ramp. This is something that, you know, you see a lot out of G2 especially loves to do this type of double play where you can double up kind of long term in ramp if you want. You do have to worry about the outer play. JT has a smoke though. He could be jiggling with the smoke. That's a really risky play. I mean, obviously if it goes well, it gives them a lot of information because right now with the situation they're in, it gets a little bit awkward. I think if they kind of came out through here maybe, it can get a little bit uncomfortable, and it could be, I think for all Complexity, there could be an upper exec coming in, right? There could just be 5 guys lobby like ready to push out. So I think they wanted to get some information, and 97 damage. I mean, that's make or break, right? Like if he loses that duel, this round goes a completely different way than it's probably going to go here. Although Mao's actually, they make their way back in the lobby. Halzerk, I think the main thing they're worried about there as you're walking in is, you know, if you walk in a little too early, sometimes you can get just drilled by an opera that's been holding. As the round goes on, I think that's a little bit less likely. But obviously Mao's with the regroup. As I turn off my heater. Is JT, sorry, JT's in lower, right? Okay, I thought he was Africa and he was about to catch Shuhei. But the hit into upper, and it's just straight out squeaky. And I'm guessing they just waited out the squeaky smokes here. Because usually you have like multiple re-smokes on squeaky. Maybe Complexity, they should have had money, right? I was thinking maybe they didn't have enough money for it. But yeah, there's just no re-smoke in squeaky. I guess they used them all early. But they did start obviously Halzerk and Floppy in towards ramp. So they're probably missing one re-smoke that they'd otherwise want. And that's the one of the things you have to worry about when you're in that setup is they didn't really have any re-smokes for squeaky, which means if you're not able to re-smoke squeaky, these types of kind of I wouldn't say puggy, but they're kind of like, you know, looser style hits out of squeaky where you somewhat just duel your opponents can be really effective. I saw that, I mean, when you look at Na'Vi, they have a few variations of their upper hit. I showed in one of their games that they did a specific variation against G2 because G2 was delaying, when they got mollied hut, they would delay their squeaky smoke until after the top hut's molly was gone. So there was a gap where there was no squeaky molly, or no squeaky molly and no squeaky smoke, and they just popped out, and it's pretty tough to deal with. And that's one of the things I noticed, like the differences between pugs and like competitive play is like one of those is that people just leave squeaky completely dry and then, you know, kind of hoping things don't go wrong. So Grim is doing basically the same thing he did before. He's kind of jiggling with his gun out, and it looks like Xerxin is ready for that. Like, it looks like Xerxin is ready for that, and that's what I was talking about. Like, if it's not expected, it's really effective, but if they're predicting it, if they're ready for it, they can, in fact, kind of deal with you. Now, you have to obviously balance that. For example, I'm sure Halzerk sometimes is just going to hold this angle here into hut, and he can get some kills on Xerxin if he goes for that type of play. But you're either in the right setup or you're not on any given round. And obviously in this round, they weren't in the exact right setup, right? So kind of, I guess one of the more pivotal rounds is this type of round here where if Complexity lose it, they're going to be on eco, and then the half can absolutely get out of control. In terms of utility, by the way, if you're talking about like what utility you want to be throwing as an upper hold, usually you always molly squeaky, and you aim through these two railings is the easiest way to molly it. And then sometimes you molly hut, and sometimes you don't. I think the easiest way if you're playing pugs, if you want a decent utility set, is you do what Grim does here. Molly squeaky, then jump onto the silo, nade into hut. In fact, you can actually right-click a nade into hut as you jump on top of hut in a kind of like lower rank pug, where top hut mollies aren't very common, right? Because top hut mollies are the thing that you're worried about. Oi. I think, is he trying to bait out the shot, or is he just, yeah, there you go. Sometimes people just jiggle when they're in that spot in dark just to try and like get the information at the right time, but that's what I was talking about. You know, if there's an opper there, it can be troublesome. And the response from Mao is, I mean, that's a standard response, right? If you know the opper is dropped into upper, the odds of a double ramp are quite a bit lower. And if there is a double ramp, you're much more likely to be able to deal with it, right? So they're doing this pretty aggressively, right? Actually, Jimpat just kind of ran almost straight out. And Floppy's aim is just crispy as hell right now. Okay. Well, it actually looks like Halzerk might have been... He might have got that kill hut and tried to actually rotate specifically down into... down over to ramp, like to try and stop that exact play. But, I mean, that's a matter of timing, right? And they're just not going to leave that type of timing open. Maos, they're... I mean, sometimes, but in general, they're just going to try... Their goal is to beat that timing. They don't want to let the rotate get there, if they can help it at all. So in through control... It's not impossible to win, but you probably need Halzerk to miss. You probably needed Halzerk to miss. And as long as he doesn't do that, that's reasonably easy 3v1. Again, this is basically the pivotal round in the opposite direction, right? Where... Ooh, nice little play from Halzerk. Nice little play from Halzerk. And this is... Okay, this is... I wanted to note that this is kind of what... When people say, like, people are op crutches and pugs... It's because you would never see this level of requirement of skill of shot in a pug, or almost never. He jumps in, they know that this play is possible because the molly, I think JT just mollied, or is it JT or molly deep squeaky. So they know that this play is fairly likely to come, or a rifler could be swinging in, so they toss this flash. Halzerk sees it coming, dodges it, turns back around, hits the shot. Like, in a million years, I don't think you're gonna see, at least outside of like 4K elo type plugs, you're generally not going to see that type of play, like that type of required skill where it's like you have to turn back and then mid-turn be ready to shoot. In pugs, it's like, oh, they're running out ramp dry with no flash. Like, even at high rank bugs, it's like, oh, they swung out mid and I just killed, like Mirage. They're like, they swung out mid with no utility and I just got 2 kills. It's like, you know, it's just, the utility is not there to make these shots hard. So it can be kind of I accept that it can be kind of a crutch where if CT side opping in CS is just so easy in pugs, you know? Anyways. Rotating up through heaven is Liege, 3v3. Grim was just in a tough spot there, and that was a very nice clear by Brawlin. You have to kind of accept that. It's just not the easiest spot. I mean, top hut's a great angle, but usually you want someone kind of supporting you so you can actually do something other than just hope you look at the right spot. Oh my god, Brawlin's on a heater, dude. Jesus. All right. I'm actually surprised Halzerk's going for this. I thought the bomb was a little more ticked down. That one's kind of iffy. So one of the things that people don't quite get is the situations where, you know, sometimes saving, even in a similar similar win rate situation, like, oh, I have a 10% chance to win this. It's like, sometimes you go for it anyways because your team is screwed on money anyways. So it's like, if I win this, it makes a big difference. Whereas like other times it goes, well, if I save here, I have a very good chance like our buy in the next round is going to be a lot better. I can drop a gun, we can have an almost full buy, right? I think those actually make a big difference. There, I don't know. I feel like for Halzerk, that's like with an op coming in through mini, it's not unwinnable, but unless you're kind of playing a team that's just making a lot of mistakes, I feel like that's not particularly winnable. I feel like it's probably one where he might generally lean towards a save, but there was time on the clock, I guess. Anyways, rotating into lower, somehow already they're 4v2. Just the Liege getting a couple of entries on outer. Man! People talk about the level of pro CS going up a lot, and I feel like on an individual level, like the individual skill of players is drastically higher. I'm not sure if like the teamwork between players is necessarily that much better. I'm gonna get like hate for this. Look, like teams are a lot more active. The meta has definitely developed and improved over time. But like, is any team really like mid-round, more coordinated player to player than Prime Astralis now? Maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe they are. I don't know. To me, it's like the things that have developed are like the meta is a lot more active and it's a lot harder to just hard counter people, and you leave smaller gaps, smaller openings. You're gambling less, right? You're kind of doing active plays where you kind of move over, stack one side, get aggressive, things like that. But are teams really more coordinated when the round has broken down than Astralis was? I don't know if the answer is yes. But anyways. Nice little play from Halzerk. You'll notice he tossed that molly. The molly actually didn't land, but the idea there is if you toss that molly, you can buy just enough time for your player. If he drops vent instantly, like as he sees those smokes, he drops vent. You toss that molly, buy just a little bit of time for that player to get that rotate over. And some teams you'll notice will actually, they can use that and they can actually throw that molly, wait, and then nade out the smoke, kind of gambling, like guessing that the T's might be rotating, or like waiting right behind the molly. The rotate down vents from JT, because of where Elige died, right? Like this is incredibly dangerous generally if your player dies like, you know, closer over here or back here. But because of where Elige died, he's able to rotate down vents pretty aggressively and get into a reasonable position. And obviously Mouse was trying to push in and take that control as quickly as possible. But, you know, you have to win those fights, and JT... As far as IGLs go, it does feel like JT has a lot of pop-off performances comparative to almost any other IGL I can think of. Like, Shuhei is probably the only other IGL that I think of where I'm like... I mean, Shuhei does it probably more... He does it in, like... He's got more kind of experience, right, doing this stuff against top teams, it seems like. But JT is, like, kind of underrated in terms of his ability to frag and IGL, you know, at a very high level against some of the best teams. I mean... He's not, you know, he's no Hooksy. All right, I mean, obviously Mouse is just trying to bait out some time, bait out some utility so that, you know, Complexity aren't, you know, rich into the following round. I don't think it matters that much. They mostly had Deagles there, so while they were trying to waste some time and bait out some utility, I think they're also just hoping that the right player can get an entry. One of the things that, if I have a suggestion, I don't know, you guys can tell me if you guys don't even fucking play the game, because maybe like most of the viewers here don't play, but I kind of think of like how you can use these types of games in Pugs. That's like some of the value I try to add here. And one of the things you can do in Pugs is keep in mind that like one of the most annoying things to deal with is when in Pugs, like your whole team, all 5 players buy Deagles. It's like, someone has to take the hit and buy a bit of utility. On Nuke, maybe you can get away with it, but like on Inferno especially, or Mirage, Inferno is the main map I'm thinking about, but like Mirage is true. Probably most maps, you need someone that has like a smoke and a couple flashes, because even if you get an entry or two with the Deagle, you still need to hit into the bomb site somehow, right? Like, and you can lose a 5v3 if you just hit into a bomb site with Deagles against 2 M4s, right? And you have no utility. Wow, this is a really chaotic round to try and observe. Like, these are the rounds that make this map so annoying to observe with 1-layer mini-maps, because you got players coming from both sides. Floppy's in a good position, and Xerxin tried to bait, it seemed like, for his teammate, right? He breaks the window as Shuhei opens the door. One of the annoying things, honestly, one of my most the biggest annoyances I've had recently with CS2 that I've been really noticing since I've been playing a lot more is like sounds overriding sounds, where it's like someone hits the bomb, starts diffusing, and it's not that you don't hear it because there's another sound nearby. It's that like it overrides the sound. So the diffuse sound literally doesn't play because someone shot a Deagle close to you and the bomb was diffused like half a bomb site away. It's like unbelievable. I don't know. It seems completely ridiculous to me. Like, that doesn't seem like something that should exist. I don't know. Maybe I'm look, someone that's like an audio engineer might tell me I'm completely crazy, but I'm pretty sure the sounds sometimes just don't play. Like, that's why you can full silent jump into Boiler now on Inferno. Okay, all right. Grim, did you win this? Grim won this. Okay, we're watching this round back. Okay, we'll watch it back. If you shoot your gun as you jump into Boiler, it's like full silent. I don't even think it's possible to hear you if you shoot at the right time. All right, so the Grim rotate through Secret. He's obviously got to bait his teammates here. Blame F moment. I don't know. He's got to bait his teammates here because if he dies, then they can full focus on ramp, and then you're just never holding. But if he waits off of his teammates, then his teammates might be able to get something done with 2 players there. Then he can play off that contact, and yeah. That's one of those situations where if so I talked in I think the most recent demo review about playing time, and I'm like, some people are just like, play time, and it's like, dude, there's 5 minutes left on the clock. How am I supposed to play time? That's one where I think Torji was trying to play time there, and I think if he had like not tried to play time and just peeked out, he might have just insta-killed Grim. Sometimes playing time can get you kind of screwed, you know? You try to play time, and it was the right idea if you just delayed for like a second, if Grim just didn't hit an insta headshot on him, right? But it's one of those ones where he probably is thinking like, damn, dude, if I just peeked out on him right away, like, I'd probably just kill him. I'd probably just kill him. He's got his Tech 9 out, right? And I mean, Grim took a risk too, right? He pulled his Tech 9 out so he could run. Oh my God, Floppy. What is that? What is that? What are those? All right, so just Floppy insta drops down vents, 5v4 immediately. Complexity did win pistol on first half also, and winning both pistols. I need to recheck this data because winning both pistols, when I looked, was still not as impactful as it was in CSGO, despite having less rounds. It still led to the winning the game, winning the map less often than in CSGO. But I feel like surely that must be different now. Because teams have gone back to forcing second round regularly. And the data seems to suggest that forcing second round is pretty much always a good idea in terms of how many rounds you're expected to win on any given map. So, I don't know. I don't know. Full save from Mouse, which is risky. I'm surprised they went for the full save there, honestly. Like, I maybe they're thinking like, okay, if we buy here and we win, I don't see the full save. To me, I feel like this is one where, okay, the reason the logic I can give you for a full save there is that we're the better team, and so if we just get onto guns, we still can win relatively well. We're like, that's something you do, I think, if you're playing a much worse team, because force buys can be a pretty kind of risky. You either hit a shot or you don't. They either walk into your stack or they don't, right? It can be a bit of a gamble. Whereas, I mean, gun rounds have their gambles as well, but I think if you have some, if you're like Mao's playing like M80 or Wildcard or something, like a sub-top team, I think this play, I like this logic. I've advocated for this logic in the past, honestly, when you're playing a team much worse than you. Like, imagine you're playing like a Face-It 10 team playing a bunch of Face-It 3s, right? Like, do you force? Maybe. But like, also if you just give them the round and you just buy in the following round, like, don't you think you can win kind of like 8 of 9 gun rounds more likely? But I don't know. I think the logic kind of can go both directions, but regardless, one of the things we saw from Complexity, they went for the fast JT down lower play because that's when, so in these sorts of bonus rounds, there's lots of different logical ways to play out these rounds. There's not one way that is best to play out these sorts of rounds. Sometimes you want to play strats that are a little slow to draw out utility because you know your opponents don't have a lot of it. Sometimes you play strats that are pretty quick because you got Mac 10s, things like that. But the only thing that's necessary is that it's considered, right? Like, you think about the weaponry you have, the weapons your opponents have, and try and use that to your advantage. That's the only, you know, if any IGLs are around. I notice, you know, I've noticed some people are kind of like, oh yeah, we just run a standard round. And it's like, I don't know if that's the play. Nice flash from Grim. Halzer's going for the same peek with an op. Oh boy. Okay, that was close. That was close. That was close. I mean, Shuhei had the right jiggle, I suppose. Didn't really let go or let almost any opportunity to actually get shot at there. And if a rifler's peeking, if you're jiggling like that with a nade out, it is very tough to hit that shot. And JT will cross over. Honestly, listen, this is just me, but like, I would rather be Xerxin here. For some reason, shooting down at people, I just cannot do it. Shooting up is tough. Like, this is awkward. Okay, I don't know if I'd rather be Xerxin here. That's a fucking hard shot. Okay, but but at the same time, dude, you know how many times I've like whiffed on that shot? Oh my god. All right. Complexity walking back in a ramp, and okay. I'm ready to say like, dude, if we look at this, so I almost mentioned, you know, you're a terrible aimer when you suck on both sides of an engagement. Like if I was Xerxin there, I would be dead, and if I was JT there, I would be dead. Like even at like a standard level, because it's like I'm just like bad at both sides of that engagement. And Floppy, it just dominates both sides of this engagement. He destroyed Mouse when Mouse tried to go for this play on ramp. And then he just absolutely blasted Torshi swinging in a ramp. Like, that is a ridiculous level of shot he just hit there. And that actually makes the round... I mean, they literally keep it... Think about this. They just brought 3 players in a ramp into a double stack ramp. 3v2. You're supposed to lose that every time if you're Mouse. Or if you're Complexity. You're supposed to just lose 2 players there, at least minimum 2 players, if not all 3, and they just somehow made this round winnable. Now I think Shuhei just heard Elige, which means they should have an idea of basically where every player on Complexity is, but still with 3 players alive, it's pretty tough to get this type of job done. And this is a very winnable 1v2 by Halzerg. I'm surprised he didn't just drop, actually. I'm pretty surprised he didn't drop. But the problem is, I think that, yeah, you know why he didn't drop? So dropping there, I think when you're watching it with GoTV, I think dropping there is like, dude, why didn't you drop? And I kind of said that myself. But at the same time, think about this from the other perspective, is that Complexity just had ramp control a little bit earlier. So there's pretty reasonably high odds that the second player from Mouse is in lower and is in vents. And so... if that player is in vents, if Halzerg just walks up, gets the kill on the player's second vents, then he's in an amazing situation. I mean, the player that was lower could go heaven. There's no guarantee that he goes, you know, vents to upper. He could go back around heaven, but there's a very high chance that he goes vents because Halzerg could have just dropped vents, right? So the play looks a little odd, but if you think about the situation that could have been instead of the situation that actually was, and, you know, that's all Halzerg's playing off. I don't know. I feel like players sometimes just don't get any benefit of the doubt when it comes to that type of thing. People look at, like, oh, what exactly actually happened? And it's like, dude, when you're playing the game, you don't know where your opponent actually is. That's called wall hacks, guys. It's called cheating. Okay? All you know is where he could be based on where, you know, the information you have and where you were, where it would be logical for them to be. And... it was a very aggressive play from, I'm not sure who, the re-aggression up ramp after Complexity took it. But anyways, Floppy getting into this angle here, this is kind of like the dream angle, I think, that you want to get into, because from this angle, you can hear players that drop off silos, you can hear them dropping off rafters if they drop Mustang on top of hut without the silent drop. You get so much information when you're listening here. You can hear players rotating all over the place, as opposed to the other side of ramp where you can still hear things, but it's not quite the same. And wow, this is like a crazy pivot. So they're kind of spotting ramp. I think Floppy might want to get spotted, and then as he's backing up, they just kind of turn this into a crazy fast upper hit. With some pretty solid utility, Grim comes out. Oh, he can't quite land the shot, but does clear out sight, and then Torshi's kind of trapped in heaven, and this is one where you don't really have a great solution. You want to come out as the bomb gets planted, but players so often fake plant from there because they know exactly what you're doing. It's kind of like a mind game to try and get the right timing. And that's really well played from Complexity. I mean, even watching it as a spectator, it was I didn't check the guy top lobby that was probably lining up flashes, but it looked like they might have been considering ramp, and maybe they really were considering ramp and they just pivoted back into it. But I think it's possible they were just trying to get spotted with a couple players ramp and then make their way back. Although that's pretty risky. You're playing a risky game in that case if you don't know where the Opera is. The Opera could just get a kill. So maybe they were planning on going ramp, or maybe it was just they never even. Maybe I'm just misremembering what actually happened. In any case, you know, despite winning a few rounds in a row, you still have MOUZ on a pretty janky buy here into what could be potentially the final round, right? Like, they actually don't have that much utility, and this is like one of the things where if you have someone really paying attention to the econ, you might be able to know this type of thing. Like 5 players alive, then 1 player alive. They should be low on money, but I think it depends on how those rounds went, right? Like if one of those rounds, you know, they had, if their players that survived had full utility, I think the buy could look much closer to a full buy than what it is. But here, just really well-timed flashes. Gets a couple players out, and yeah, I mean, this is... Okay, let's watch this from Brawlin's POV. So Brawlin is in place. He sees the exit coming out. He tries to dodge the flash. And sometimes, like, this is the one problem I have. Like, Refrag has their, like, sight hold trainer or whatever. And sometimes it feels like you're kind of just, you learn the sight hold and you hold against it. And the same thing can be true in the pro scene too, though, because Brawlin is obviously trying to listen for a flash that I don't think, well, the flash is above lobby, above hut came out, but sometimes there's this flash that bounces off the wall here and lands right here that will really blind this guy. And I'm not sure if that's the flash he's trying to dodge, or if he probably still would get blind from these flashes up here. So maybe I'm just talking about nothing. Any case, he's trying to dodge the flash, but they're kind of out a little faster than he's expecting. He still turns around and gets a kill, which probably shouldn't be happening. I mean, Grim is literally trying to clear that exact angle. Then you have, we already saw Shuhei, and Xerxin is in a pretty good spot, but some of the flashes are landing. These exec where flashes are still popping after the players are out are incredibly hard to deal with. And I don't know if there's technically a name for them, but they're becoming so common now. I mean, Spirit loves to run them for Donk. Navi used to run them a lot with Electronic, where you have a player come out and then it's like, okay, a flash lands behind a wall just before your player swings it, right? It's like, those are so hard to deal with, and it's hard to sympathize with how hard those are to deal with unless you've played against one, because it's fucked. Okay, it's